The dashboard warning light had been blinking for 6 miles before the engine finally gave out, and Corbin Hale sat behind the wheel of a car worth more than most houses, stranded on a 2-lane road outside a town he couldn't have located on a map an hour earlier. He was 44 years old, the founder of a logistics software company valued at $900 million, and he had never once in his adult life been late to something without a team of people apologizing on his behalf. Today there was no team. There was a dead engine, a dying phone battery, and a rusted sign a quarter-mile up the road that read, "Denny's Auto, Foreign and Domestic." He walked the quarter-mile in dress shoes that were not built for gravel shoulders, arriving at a garage that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts itself. Corrugated metal roof, 3 bays, 1 working overhead door, a hand-painted sign taped inside the window that said, "We don't judge. We fix." A heavy-set man in his 60s named Denny came out wiping his hands on a rag and told him it'd be at least 2 hours before he could get to it personally. Maybe longer. Corbin had a keynote in 90 minutes at a regional tech summit 40 miles away, a room of 300 people waiting, and precisely no leverage over a broken timing chain. "I've got a kid who can look at it now. If you don't mind waiting on someone young," Denny said, almost apologetically, gesturing toward the second bay, where a teenage boy in an oversized work shirt was already wiping down a socket wrench like the conversation had nothing to do with him. Corbin looked at the boy. Maybe 16. Thin in the way that comes from growing fast on not enough food, hands already stained with grease past the wrists, and felt the particular, familiar impatience of a man who had built an empire on the assumption that time was the only truly scarce resource, and that most people were not worth spending it on. "I need someone who actually knows what they're doing," Corbin said, not unkindly, but not kindly either. "Not someone's nephew killing a summer." Before we continue, if you believe that talent has no age limit and worth wears no diploma, please like this video, subscribe to Kindness Tales, and share this with someone who needs to believe in people again today. The boy's name was Tobias. He didn't look up right away, and when he did, there wasn't offense in his face, just the practiced blankness of someone who had absorbed that exact tone from adults his whole life, and learned it cost less to let it pass through him than to fight it. "I've had 2 Bentleys and a Maserati in this bay in the last year," Tobias said, evenly. "All 3 left running better than when they came in. Your car's a G-Wagon with a chain tensioner problem, probably. I can tell you in 10 minutes if I'm right." Denny didn't apologize for him. He just nodded once, like a man vouching for something he'd already tested. Corbin, with nothing better to do and 90 minutes evaporating, said fine, and stood back with his arms crossed while a 16-year-old foster kid popped the hood of a car that cost more than the boy would likely earn in 5 years of honest work. Tobias moved with a precision that Corbin recognized instantly, because he'd spent 2 decades around engineers and knew the difference between someone performing competence and someone who simply possessed it. No wasted motion, no second-guessing. He listened to the engine turn over, listened again, then said without triumph, "Tensioner's shot. Like I said, your dealership serviced this 6 months ago and didn't catch it. I can see where they reset the light without actually replacing the part. That's not a mistake. That's a shortcut." He looked up. "You want it fixed right, or you want it running long enough to get you to your thing?" Corbin, despite himself, felt something shift. How do you know it was reset without being fixed? "Wear pattern doesn't match the service sticker date," Tobias said, already reaching for a part on the shelf behind him, one he'd apparently already guessed he'd need. If it were actually new, the tensioner wouldn't show this kind of stretch yet. Whoever worked on it just cleared the code and sent you on your way. It took Tobias 51 minutes to do what 2 licensed technicians at a dealership Corbin paid handsomely had failed to do twice. Corbin stood in the open bay door for most of it, phone forgotten in his pocket, watching a boy in a shirt 2 sizes too large diagnose a problem with more certainty than his own engineering leads brought to million-dollar architecture reviews. "Where'd you learn engine work like this?" Corbin finally asked. Tobias shrugged, wiping his hands. "Manuals, mostly. Denny lets me keep a stack in the back. I found a set of old Bentley factory manuals in a donation bin behind the library 2 years ago. Nobody else wanted them. They're not exactly useful unless you've got the car to match. I read the whole set before I ever touched one." He paused. "Couldn't get into the trade school program at the county vocational center. They need a permanent home address for enrollment, and I've moved 4 times in 3 years. Group home, then a placement that didn't work out, then another one. Denny lets me work here off the books because the alternative is I don't work at all." Corbin didn't say anything for a moment. He was thinking about his own son, 17, who had every resource in the world and no particular interest in using any of them, and about a stack of donated manuals a foster kid had taught himself an entire trade from because a form asking for an address had decided he didn't qualify to be taught properly. "You said 51 minutes, Corbin said. "You called it before you even opened the hood." "I've been wrong twice," Tobias said. "Both times on European electricals. I don't guess on things I haven't seen enough of yet. Engines, I've seen enough of." Corbin missed his keynote. He called the summit organizer and told them something had come up, which was, in its own way, entirely true. He sat in a plastic chair in Denny's front office for another hour, past the point the car was ready, asking Tobias questions about torque specifications and diagnostic logic that the boy answered without hesitation and without once checking to see if he was allowed to know as much as he did. Before Corbin left that day, he asked Denny quietly what it would take to get Tobias into a real program. An accredited one, with an actual pathway to certification, not dependent on an address that kept changing out from under him. Denny said he'd tried twice already and hit the same wall both times. Corbin said he'd handle the wall. It took 3 weeks, not because the money was hard to find, but because bureaucracy moves slower than generosity. Corbin's foundation didn't just pay tuition. His team worked with the county to establish Tobias's enrollment through Denny's garage as a verified work-study address, something that should have existed as an option years earlier and simply never had someone with the patience or the reason to push for it. Corbin visited the garage twice more that fall, not to check on an investment, but because he found himself genuinely wanting to know what Tobias had figured out that week. By spring, Tobias was the youngest person ever accepted into the Regional Technical Institute's Advanced Diesel and Diagnostics track, 2 years ahead of the normal enrollment age, on a full scholarship that Corbin's foundation had quietly funded but never put its name on, because Tobias had asked him not to. He didn't want it to be a story about who paid for it. He wanted it to be a story about the manuals nobody else wanted, and the man who let him keep reading them, and the 10 minutes it took to be right about an engine nobody else had bothered to really look at. Denny kept the "We don't judge, we fix" sign taped in the window. He added a second one beneath it, smaller, in Tobias's own handwriting. "Every engine tells the truth if you listen long enough." Corbin still drives the G-Wagon. He has it serviced now, every time. At a garage with a corrugated metal roof, 40 miles outside a town he once couldn't have located on a map. Because the boy who fixed it in 51 minutes had already told him something no dealership ever had, that most people don't need to be discovered. They need someone to stop assuming they already know what a person is worth before checking under the hood. If this story moved you, please like this video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to Kindness Tales for more stories of courage, grace, and the small human moments that change everything. And tell us in the comments, Has someone ever underestimated you before they had all the facts?